Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Who can believe kids are pleading to go back to school? So Jenny, what is your hope for all of this? You know, that you're going to keep doing it throughout this, but what is your hope for, you know, what this does for people, for kids, for the parents, for everyone?
Ellen Daniels.
I really hope that it just helps, like Chloe said, I hope it gives people permission to be honest about whatever they're experiencing. And when they read the story, to know that they're not alone. That if you're frustrated or lonely or scared or grateful,
Good morning, everyone. We're using a waiting room today, just a bit of an added security feature. So it's going to take some time for people to join us. I can see who's trying to get in and admit people one by one.
Otherwise, you want all these other people?
Yeah. I don't get the sound of.
What?
I don't get the sound. I just unmuted and it's still.
Did he mute you?
I know that you're all on mute. As long as you can hear me, then that's okay. Can you give me a thumbs up if you can hear me? Okay, great. Just give me a couple minutes. We're going to let in everybody else into the class, and then we can start. For those who are already here, it would be helpful if you could make sure that the name that appears on your screen, that is your name, that it actually says your name on it, and not iPhone or iPad. It'd be nice to see who's here on the call. Just a reminder that this morning's class is going to be recorded, just like last week's class. If you missed last week's class, the recording is available on the Beth Tikva website. And you're welcome to look at it if you'd like when you get the chance. This class will also be recorded. So if you prefer to turn your video monitors off, you're obviously free to do that just by pressing the Start Video button. You should still be able to participate fully in the class and learn. We are in the middle of, or I should say, towards the beginning of the second chapter of the book of Ruth. We're at the scene where Boaz is introduced to us as being not only a relative, a possible redeemer for Ruth, but even more than that, what's amazing about him is that he seems like a wonderful guy. Not only is the hero in this book, Ruth, who I think many of us, as the story has begun, have already fallen in love with, but we start to fall in love with Boaz as well. He is a wonderful prince for this Cinderella, and not the typical prince from a Disney movie, not young and handsome, but he's presented as older and wise and respected and wealthy. And we're going to see in the next chapter, he really has no romantic interest in her at all. When she asks him, "Why are you being so nice to me?" As I said at the end of last class, we would expect them to say, "Because you're beautiful." That's sort of the standard in every biblical book. When men are nice to women, it's because they're beautiful. But Boaz doesn't say that. He says, "I'm nice to you because I heard about what you did for your mother-in-law." Her deeds are being rewarded. Ruth's deeds are being rewarded. Her character is being rewarded. There is absolutely nothing said here about her appearance, which I think is really remarkable in the story. So I need, for today, I need a voice of the narrator. I would like to pick on somebody. Can I pick on Abe and Vivian, or Abe or Vivian? Because you missed the class last week, and I feel terrible. Plus, they have a beautiful South African accent that I think can add. But you do have to figure out how to unmute yourselves. Can you do that? Just try clicking on that unmute button one more time, Abe. Oh, there you go. Can you? I think we can hear you now. Okay, so who is it, Abe or Vivian, who wants to be our narrator?
Take Vivian, Jared.
Okay, my pleasure. So here we are in Robert Alter's biblical text. Can you all see it? Give me a thumbs up if you can see Robert Alter. We are in verse 17. And she gleaned.
In the field till evening and beat out what she had gleaned. And it came to almost an ephah of barley.
Now, Vivian, don't be offended. I'm going to keep interrupting you during your reading. I apologize in advance. We are meant to be, when we read that, an ephah of barley, meant to be shocked, That is a tremendous amount of barley for a gleaner to come home with. A gleaner is supposed to come back with almost nothing. And when we read, wow, it's like she came back rich. So imagine what Naomi's reaction is going to be when she sees Ruth coming from gleaning with all of this barley.
And she carried it and came to the town, and her mother-in-law saw what she had gleaned. And she took out and gave to her what she had left over after being sated. And her mother-in-law said to her, "Where did you glean today, and where did you work? May he who recognized you be blessed." And she told her mother-in-law how she had worked with him, and she said, "The name of the man with whom I work today is Boaz." And Naomi said to her daughter-in-law, "Blessed is he to the Lord, who has not forsaken his kindness with the living and with the dead." And Naomi said to her, "The man is related to us. He is of our redeeming kin."
So we're meant to read all of these verses as if Naomi is shocked beyond belief. She sees Ruth coming with this immense amount of grain, and her reaction is, who, what, where, why, how did this happen? We're not supposed to come back with all of this stuff. She can barely speak. Where did you glean? Where did you work? May he who recognized you be blessed. In other words, someone must have done something very nice to you. And she answers very innocently. Remember, Ruth has no clue who Boaz is. It is Naomi who suddenly realizes in these verses that God has been looking out for her. Remember, we said that part of what we're supposed to understand about the story of Ruth, just like the story of Esther, God isn't really present in this book, right? God isn't a character, but he's behind the scenes. Ruth suddenly ends up at this field. She could have ended up gleaning at any field, but she ends up at Boaz's field. And now it is revealed to Naomi that God really played a hand in putting all of this together. And not only have you found somebody who is generous and who looked out for you and who gave you all this grain, but she's realizing you have not forsaken your kindness with the living and the dead. Why does she say that? You didn't forsake your kindness with the living of the dead, because she regards herself, Naomi, as dead. She has no husband, no sons anymore. As I said last week, that is the lowest social status that a person can have in the biblical world. She is as dead. And so she exclaims, God has given me life, renewed my life again. She's already figured out what's going on. It's amazing how she puts everything together. I would offer all of you today, I think Naomi isn't just the smartest woman in the book of Ruth. She might be the smartest woman in the whole Hebrew Bible. When you talk about a character whose wisdom is revealed in almost everything she says, that's Naomi. She already understands, oh my God, this is all meant to be. You were meant to go to the field. He's our next of kin. You need to go and marry him, right? And that's how I'm going to be revived. That's how my life is going to be restored. The man is related to us. He is of our redeeming kin. Amazing. Now, Ruth is just playing catch up in her mind. What do you mean? I just thought I met a nice guy who said he would take care of me. Naomi says, no, you met much more than that. So let's go on, Vivian.
And Ruth the Moabite said, "Moreover, he said to me, to the lads who are mine shall you cling until they finish."
Okay, so I just want to interrupt you there. First of all, that word again, cling. This is a trigger word. We saw it last week too. Remember, from the Torah, it says a man leaves his father and his mother and clings, vidavak, be'ishto, and clings to his wife. This is a trigger word. He said to me, to the lads who are mine, you shall cling until they finish the harvest that is mine. So, number one, we have a trigger word here. The other thing is that I want you to notice, this is not what Boaz said to her. Let's go back. What did Boaz say to her? Previous page.
Boaz said to her, 14.
Hold on. I think it's here. Here we go. Last lines. Have you not heard, my daughter? Do not go to glean in another field, and also do pass on here. So shall you cling to my young women. Boaz told her, stay with the women. She goes to Naomi and says, no. He told me, well, she doesn't say no. She doesn't tell her what actually happened. She says, he told me to stay with thee, to cling to the men, right? Why do you think she changes what she says? I have an answer, but let's go on a little bit further. And I plant that in your minds as a trigger, right? Why does Ruth change what Boaz, when she reports it to Naomi, why does she change what Boaz actually said?
Shall I continue?
Yes.
And Naomi said to Ruth, her daughter-in-law, it is good, my daughter, that you shall go out with his young women.
Right, so she changes it. No. Don't go with the men. You stay with the young women, and that they
not trouble you in another field. And she clung.
Clung. Highlight, everybody. She clung
to Boaz's young women to glean till the barley harvest and the wheat harvest were finished. And she stayed with her mother-in-law. So
let me give you my explanation for why I think it's important to see this change in this subtle change of wording when Ruth reports what happened to Naomi. Ruth is a bit naive. She is portrayed as in the book as innocent and pure and good. There's no question. But Naomi is the one with the brains. And in Ruth's innocence, I think she's saying to Naomi, maybe I will find among the maidservants, maybe I will find among the male servants in the household of Boaz, maybe I'll find a man there. That's as far as Cinderella's dreams are taking her. She's not dreaming of anything bigger than just the simple servants in Boaz's field. That's what I think is behind her words. Maybe she's saying it purposefully, or maybe subconsciously she's saying to Naomi, a great thing happened to me today, and because he told me he'll protect me, maybe I'll find a husband among the servants in Boaz's field. That's all she can see. She sees sardines, but Naomi wants her to have the big fish. And so Naomi says, no. Don't you hang around with the men. I have bigger dreams for you. I want you to stay with the women. Cling to the women. This powerful motif in the story of women helping each other and cooperating with each other. You'll be safe with the women on the field, in the field. They will protect you. And Naomi and Ruth cooperating with each other, both of them saying, one who has sort of the sweet innocence and the other with the brains, but they're working together in order to dream bigger. And that's my thoughts about why she changes what Boaz actually said to her. Now, what ends up happening is the first so sort of, I said to you, there's no good Cinderella story where everything just works out right from the beginning. In a Cinderella story, something has to go wrong. So the first thing that goes wrong is Boaz is not really romantically interested in Ruth the way we might like him to be. It says, from the barley harvest and the wheat harvest was finished, and she stayed with her mother-in-law. So she listens. Ruth listens to Naomi. She keeps going back to the field and hanging around with the young women, gleaning the harvests until they were finished. But it doesn't say that Boaz takes notice of her. That's about 6 months where she was there, and nothing really seemed to happen. So here again, we're going to need women to help out other women. Let's continue on. Vivian, go ahead.
And Naomi, her mother-in-law, said to her, "My daughter, shall I not seek for you a settled place for you, that it be well for you? And now is not Boaz our kinsman, with whose young women you were winnowing barley at the threshing floor tonight? And you must bathe and anoint yourself, and put on your garments, and go down to the threshing floor. Do not let yourself be known to the man till he has finished eating and drinking. And it will be when he lies down that you will know the place where he lies down, and you shall come and uncover his feet and lie down. As for him, he shall tell you what you should do."
So we have nothing is happening with this relationship, right? And finally, Naomi says, I'm going to take matters into my own hands. It's time that I seek out a settled place for you. This is really remarkable because women are portrayed in the Bible usually not as cooperating with each other. Think about Rachel and Leah fighting over Jacob, about Sarah and Hagar fighting over Abraham, about Hannah and Peninnah who are fighting over Elkanah. When there are not that many scenes, but where there are scenes with women together who both like the same guy, there is competition and jealousy. Here, there's cooperation between two women who both have something positive, but both have something negative. But what they find is that the opposite in the other is useful when they put their strengths together. So what is it that Ruth lacks? Well, Ruth seems to lack any knowledge about how to seduce a man. She needs Naomi's help. Naomi, who's older, she knows a thing or two about men. What does she lack, Naomi? She can't have kids anymore. She would go and seduce Boaz herself if it would be of any purpose. So together they are whole. We need Naomi's wisdom, but we need Ruth's youth. Together they realize if we cooperate with each other, we can achieve salvation. And she knows a lot about men, it seems, Naomi. She comes up with all of these instructions on how to seduce Boaz. Bathe and anoint yourself, right? That's important. Remember, these are women who are, that's today we take that for granted. Everyone takes a shower every day. Back in biblical times, people were not as concerned about bodily hygiene. So that's important that she's saying, listen, you've got to, when you're on the day that you pick to seduce Boaz, you've got to bathe and anoint yourself and put on your garments. In other words, you got to look really good. and go down to the threshing floor. The threshing floor is in the book of Ruth, sort of it's the background of a neurotic scene, right? You're not going to look great out in the fields collecting grain. Nobody looks good when they're doing that, but you'll look much better if you head down to the threshing floor, and the scene will be perfect. It's almost like today you would say, we'll go to the bathtub and put some candles around the bathtub. That's how you set the scene. So in biblical times, it was go down to the threshing floor. Don't let yourself be known to the man till he's finished eating and drinking. Look how well Naomi knows men. The key to a man's heart is his stomach. If he's hungry, you won't stand a chance. So make sure that he is full. He's eaten and he drank, and it will be when he lies down, you'll know the place where he lies down. In other words, pretend innocently like you just bumped into him, but before you do, make sure you know exactly where he's going to sleep, and give him a foot massage. Uncover his feet and lie down, and then the rest will take care of itself. The other thing, what's interesting, what she says to Ruth, all of these instructions, don't say anything. These are all things that you need to do. Do these things, but you don't have to say anything. The things will take care of themselves. And Naomi has such confidence. I think that's why she really represents a woman of faith, Naomi. Ruth maybe is naive, but Naomi just knows God is the one making all of this happen. There's no way Ruth would have just stumbled on Boaz's field out of nowhere. God made this all happen. I guess we need to give God a little bit of help because Boaz doesn't seem to get the message here. So we've got to wake him up a little bit. But I know once we get things going that it'll all work out. Okay, let's keep going, Vivian. And she said
to her, whatever you say to me, I will do. And she went down to the threshing floor and did all that her mother-in-law charged her. And Boaz ate and drank, and he was of good cheer, and he came and lay down at the edge of the sack of barley. And she came stealthily and uncovered his feet and lay down. And it happened at midnight, when the man trembled and twisted round, and look, a woman was lying at his feet. And he said, Who are you? And she said, I am Ruth, your servant. May you spread your wing on your servant, for you are a redeeming kinsman. And he said, Blessed are you to the Lord, my daughter. You have done better in your latest kindness than in the first, not going after the young men, whether poor or rich. And now, my daughter, do not be afraid. Whatever you say, I will do for you.
For all?
My people's town knows that you are a worthy woman.
So look at what happens that night. There's a bit of the scene is set. This is going to be the night where everything happens. She uncovered his feet. She lay down. What actually happens there? They have a conversation, right? They seem to like each other. He sort of was oblivious the whole time to the situation. She reveals the situation to him. He's very surprised that she would be interested to him. I don't know what's wrong with Boaz. There's a few people have different theories about why he seems so oblivious. Men in the Bible don't really need much to be awakened sexually, awakened amorously. Boaz, either he's clueless, maybe Boaz is taking the advice of his servant. Remember that in the last chapter, the servant says, well, that's Ruth, but she's a Moabite. So maybe Boaz is saying, listen, I don't want to be with a Moabite. Maybe that's part of what's going on here. But I think there's a powerful statement here. You've done better in your latest kindness than in the first. You didn't go after the young men, whether poor or rich. What is Boaz looking for, according to this verse? What is he interested in? Why is he so impressed with this trait of Ruth? It's because Ruth doesn't act out of desperation. She doesn't go after the young men and isn't into money. And I think Boaz sees himself, even though he owns this field, he sees himself perhaps as too old to be attractive to a young woman, and maybe not of comparable wealth to be eligible for a young woman's interest. And that's why I think there's some hinting in the verses here that Boaz doesn't have a lot of self-confidence, which is, I think, another character that endears us to him. He is not arrogant at all, doesn't say at all, well, of course you'd want a guy like me. He says, I'm so impressed by your kindness, not only what you did to your mother-in-law, but what you're doing to me right now, that you would even take an interest in an old man like me. So don't be afraid. Whatever I'll do, whatever you want me to do for you, I will do. You are a worthy woman. Let's just keep going here until we see what happens that night. Vivian, and now?
Though in fact I am redeeming kin, there is also a redeeming kin closer than I. Spend the night here, and it shall be in the morning. Should he redeem you, he will do well to redeem. And if he does not want to redeem you, I myself will redeem you, as the Lord lives. Lie here till morning.
So let me, before I get to the famous Ploni Almoni, that's the closer redeeming kin. That's the second challenge that Cinderella's going to face that in her journey, right? The first challenge being Boaz's inability to recognize that she is interested in him, and just focus in on a question that everyone has to ask about that night. What happened that night? She lied down there till morning. I'm asking the obvious question. Did she have sex with him that night or not? It's almost between the lines, but it's not clear. How do we know it's between the lines? Well, the words in Hebrew, yada, she knew him, they appear in this section. Not that she knew him, but take a look very closely to what it says in the English, at least. She came and lay down at the edge of the stack of barley, vayishkav. In Hebrew, to lay down can also be used sexually, not just to lay down, she just relaxed, but it can mean to lay down with somebody. So the man trembled and twisted around. That's another sort of euphemism, perhaps. And look, a woman was lying at his feet, um, just lying there. Who are you? I'm Ruth, your servant. May you spread your wing over your servant. Now, what does that mean? Spread your wing. Um, I don't know. It means what you want it to mean. Um, you can decide for yourselves. I I think that, and I'm trying to look for where it says yada in the English. Let me see if I can find it. Um, when I find it, I'll show it to you. But it, spreading your wing over your servant, I mean, it can just be a metaphor, but it's a very suggestive kind of metaphor. I think the text is purposefully um, obscuring what happened that night. I don't think, given what we know about this story, which is that it ends up being the story of how King David came into the world, we have to read this as a story about a queen. Ruth is a queen. And what happened that night? Probably there was a romantic encounter, but we're not going to record it. We're just going to suggest it because it's inappropriate almost to record that. How did our queen become our queen? Well, she had premarital sex with this guy named Boaz, and sort of seduced him into doing so. Women who are seductive are not always portrayed in the best of lights in the Bible, right? We don't want Ruth to be portrayed as scheming in any way, even though it's clear there was a scheme, but the scheme was not to sleep with Boaz. The scheme was to arouse Boaz's attention. And it is possible to read these verses and say, what she was trying to accomplish, she accomplished, she got his attention. Great. It's also possible to read these verses and to say, nope, she did more than get his attention. She was able to spread her wings on top of him, whatever that means, that night. And that's where the romantic relationship began. So I leave you all to wonder about which is right. I'll tell you that Robert Alter says no. Nothing sexual happened that night. Vivian, could you read what he says here? Uncover his feet. This is one of those euphemisms that some, like Yochibrandis, suggests is clearly sexually suggestive. Uncovering his feet. What Brandis says is, well, she's really uncovering something else. Can you read this, Vivian? It's a little small. It says, alternatively, the Hebrew noun could mean.
Alternately, the Hebrew noun could mean the place of his feet. In any case, it is an odd detail, since the verb of uncovering is the one used in biblical prohibition of uncovering the nakedness of someone. That is, engaging in sexual intercourse. The erotic tease of the narrative is again manifest.
So he says, okay, it's an erotic tease when it says uncover, because uncover is a word used in the Bible usually before the word nakedness. But he says it's suggestive, but look what he says here in the brackets, Vivian. But
the proposal of some interpreters that feet is a euphemism for the penis is highly dubious.
Right. So he says don't go further than saying that this is suggestive. His read, Robert Alter, is Ruth lies down not alongside Boaz, but at his feet, and that's an expression of her lower social status and the subservient role of wives in relation to their husbands in biblical society. I don't know. You know what? I don't agree with Robert Alter. I think that the verbs and the uncovering and the feet and the spreading her wings over his presence, I think you have to be almost blind not to see that something more happened that night than just a sleepover party with Boaz and with Ruth. Let's get now to the second challenge that Cinderella faces on her way to meeting Prince Charming.
And she came to her mother-in-law.
Well, hold on. I just want to before we jump into it, this last piece. The story could have ended now, right? And it could have said, and they lived happily ever after, but it does not. Boaz wants the marriage to be legitimate. And in order for it to be legitimate, then he has to ask permission from his cousin, who is of closer relation to Ruth than, or through Ruth's late husband, that to closer relation to him. So he has to make sure that that he gets her permission.
And Rabbi, isn't this sort of about chalitza eventually, or chalitza, however you pronounce it?
Well, right, exactly. So chalitza is the procedure where the closest of kin says, I don't want to marry her. I will let someone else marry her. So that's exactly what has to happen here. It wasn't chalitza in biblical times. Chalitza came along later, but at least he's trying to get his permission to marry her, and he has to first ask him. So Boaz has to get his permission, and Boaz has to scheme as well, because maybe Boaz is worried, or at least I would think Boaz would be worried that if he asked permission from this Ploni Almoni, he's called Ploni Almoni, which means no name in the Bible. If no name says, well, I have first claim over her, then Boaz loses out. So Boaz has to think about how to do this properly, just like Naomi and Ruth had to scheme together about how to get Boaz's attention and manipulate the situation. So does Boaz need to manipulate. By the way, one of the themes of the book of Ruth, maybe we'll get to this on Thursday night, is manipulating situations. Everybody here is trying to manipulate facts to get the story to move along in the way they believe God has meant it to move along. It's a story of the interweaving between the divine will and man sort of pushing forward the divine will with his own reason. I should say mostly women pushing forward the divine will with her own reason. Okay, let's keep going, Vivian.
She came to her mother-in-law, and her mother-in-law said, "How is it with you, my daughter?"
How did it go? We're supposed to read, okay, how did it go, Ruth? You spent the night with him. What happened?
And she told her all that the man had done for her. And she said, "These 6 shares of barley he gave me, for he said, you could not come empty-handed to your mother-in-law together."
Wow. Look what he says here, Robert Alter. The book of Ruth is all about the transition from emptiness to fullness, from famine to abundance, from bereavement and childlessness to marriage and children. And so the fulfillment of the promise isn't just through Ruth, but it is also done through this example of the barley. Don't go empty-handed to your mother-in-law. And she said,
"Stay, my daughter, till you know how the matter will fall out, for the man will not rest if he does not settle the matter today."
so she says to Naomi, Ruth, she says to her, probably very nervous. What's going to happen? He told me he's got to ask Ploni Almoni's permission to marry me, and I don't know if things are going to work out, and maybe I'm going to get stuck marrying Ploni Almoni and not Boaz. But look here at again Naomi's wisdom, her reassurance, her faith, and also her knowledge of men. What does she say? Stay, my daughter. Stay is, think of her saying, everything will be okay. Don't worry. Everything will turn out fine. She knows that God is in control of the situation, that everything was meant to be, and everything will work out. So everything will be okay. And not only that, she says, I know how men work. This will not take long. Boaz wants you, and he's going to make it happen very quickly. If he told you all that he told you, and if that's true, don't worry, have faith. Everything is going to work out fine. Naomi doesn't need here more information. She's not anxious. She's stopped now manipulating everything. She's now returned to this sort of steady state of it's now in God's hands, and I know things are going to work out. Okay, chapter 4, last chapter.
And Boaz had gone up to the gate, and he sat down there, and look, the redeeming king of whom Boaz spoke was passing by. And he said, turn aside, sit down here, so-and-so. And he turned aside and sat down. And he took 10 men of the town elders and said, sit down here. And they sat down. And he said to the
So, by the way, look at how this is all being set. It's all being set up. You see Boaz manipulating the situation. He doesn't go right up. If Boaz was running into the town to try and find the redeeming kin and runs up to him and says, I need your permission right away to marry this Moabite woman, what do you think would happen? He would know that something was up. He would say, no, I want to see this woman first. You sound a little too desperate to want to marry this girl. So instead, Boaz spies on him from the gate of the city. He wants to check out his cousin and understand a little bit. Turn aside, sit down here, so-and-so. Ploni Almoni, come, sit down, get comfortable. I'm not in a rush. Everything in the scene has to be carefully planned out by Boaz so he gets the outcome that he desires. So then he gets a whole bunch of people around him, 10 men of the town elders. Everyone is sitting down. Okay, let me explain to you. We have a situation. Calm and collected, Boaz presents the circumstances. Sorry, could you start here, Vivian? And he said to the redeeming kin,
Naomi, who came back from the plain of Moab, sold the parcel of the field that was our brother Elimelech's. And as for me, I thought, I shall alert you, saying, acquire it in the presence of those seated here, and in the presence of my people's elders.
Does he say anything about Ruth? No. The first thing he said, if right away he started off with Ruth, right, then Ploni Almoni would know that something was up. Maybe there's something special about this girl. Maybe I should investigate. Instead, he starts talking to him about some field. Oh, a field. You mean a field that I'm going to have to inherit, and if I inherit it, I'm going to have to be responsible for it, and I have to pay taxes on it, and I'm going to have to plow it. In other words, he's saying, look, we've got this problem. Naomi came back. Elimelech, our brother, he had this tract of land, and we need to figure out who's going to deal with it. And it sounds like it's annoying because nobody really wants it.
If you would
acquire it, yeah.
If you would acquire it in the presence of those seated here, and in the presence of my people's elders.
And if not, right? Tell me
that I may know that there is none except you to redeem, and I am after you. And he said, I will redeem.
Okay, I will redeem the field. Great. So the first thing he does is he entices him with this property. He doesn't describe it in really much of any spectacular way, but of course a man wants the money, right? He died and he left a will. Do you want the money? Okay, I want the money. That's like saying the field is the equivalent of the money, so I'll take it. And Boaz said, there's one more thing. Okay, you want the field, fine, but
on the day you acquire the field from Naomi, you will also acquire Ruth the Moabite, to raise up the name of the dead man on his estate.
Right. Oh, I forgot to tell you. This field comes with a woman. Elimelech had this daughter-in-law. You never met her before. She's a Moabite. Oi, the lowest of the low. And you're going to have to make sure that she has a future so that the name of Elimelech can be preserved. And the redeeming kin said,
I cannot redeem.
change my mind, right? No, I'm not going to do it.
You redeem my obligation of redemption, for I cannot redeem.
Boaz is so smart the way he presents this, if you think about it. I've got this great field. It's a bit of a nightmare to take care of. Do you want it? Yeah, sure I want. Oh, I forgot to tell you who it comes with. In other words, Ruth, which is what Boaz really wants, is an afterthought. And he inserts her into this transaction to make her seem like the problem that comes with the transaction, right? It makes her seem like the annoyance that you're going to have to put up with, in addition to the annoyances of acquiring land in the first place. And Ploni Almoni falls right into the trap. He says, this is going to spoil my estate. What's he worried about, Ploni Almoni? He has a family of his own, and he wants his property to go to his family. And if he's now responsible for Ruth, if Ruth becomes his property, she also becomes an heir to Ploni Almoni's estate. And an heir will take some of the inheritance away from his regular family, and he doesn't want to do that. So this is all about money, the way that it's all schemed. Boaz presents this as a financial transaction, and Ruth is part of the financial transaction. It would never have occurred to Ploni Almoni that there would be anything desirable in this Moabite woman. So what does he say? You redeem my obligation for redemption, for I cannot redeem. There you go. That's the answer that he wanted. And notice how, by the way, the elders are already they're already set up and sitting around the area. Why did he do that, Boaz? Another sign of his sort of wisdom here. It's scheming up this plan so that he can run away right now, right? As long as the elders have heard that he said, I can't redeem and you can redeem, now Boaz should run because he got the answer he wanted it, and he got it in front of the town elders. Imagine if he had this conversation in private and said, okay, now we have to go to the town elders and have this conversation all over again in front of them so we can have witnesses. He's smart. He sets everything up in advance. And when he gets the outcome that he desires, he can now move on, run away, and get back to the business at hand. And thus it was.
In former times in Israel, concerning redemption and concerning exchange to fulfill every condition, a man would remove his sandal and give it to his fellow man.
There you go. There's chalitza, Vivian. You were asking about how this is done, how it was done for a redeeming kin to say, I don't want this woman. I don't want to redeem. I don't want the estate. I don't want her. He would remove his sandal and give it. And that's what he did.
And this was the practice in Israel. And the Redeemer said, you acquire it. And he removed his sandal. And Boaz said to the elders and to all the people, you are witnesses today that I have acquired all that was Elimelech's and all that was Chilion's and Mahlon's from the hand of Naomi, and also Ruth, the Moabite wife of Mahlon. I have acquired for myself as wife to raise up the name of the dead on his estate, that the name of the dead be not cut off from his brothers and from the gate of his place. You are witnesses today And all the people who were in the gate and the elders said, we are witnesses.
So not only can those witnesses serve as proof that Ploni Almoni has no interest in redeeming the property or in Ruth, now he's going to make double use of the witnesses, Boaz, and say, now I have a whole group of people gathered here in the town. While you're here, let me tell you all that I hereby redeem all that was Elimelech's, all that was his sons, Chilion and Machlon's, from the hands of Naomi. Now I am taking responsibility for all of them. And look what happens officially. This is meant to be seen as sort of the solemnization of the marriage. The woman isn't even present, but now the marriage is solemnized when he says before the elders, I have acquired for myself Ruth as a wife to raise up the name of the dead on the estate. This is now where the story might end, but there's more that the narrator wants to tell us.
May the Lord make the woman coming into your house like Rachel and like Leah, both of whom built the house of Israel, and do worthy things in Ephratah, and proclaim a name in Bethlehem. And may your house be like the house of Perez, to whom Tamar gave birth by Judah, from the seed that this young woman will give you. And
so they give her a blessing. The elders of the town, they give the blessing to who? Who do they give this blessing to? All the people who were in the gate and the elders, they said, we are witnesses.
They give a blessing to Ruth.
And look what, what's so, even on Friday nights, when we're blessing our children, we have a custom. First we bless the boys and then we bless the girls. All over the Bible, first you bless the boys, then you bless the girls, if you bless them at all. But here again, this theme that comes back to the book of Ruth, subtly challenging the patriarchy of the Bible. They bless the woman first. They don't say God bless. What they should be saying is God bless you, Boaz. What a wonderful thing you're doing. You're redeeming the name of your dead brother. But instead, they bless her, this woman who they have not even met. May the woman coming into your house be like Rachel and like Leah, both of whom built the house of Israel. What a statement this is. You want to talk about a book that's firing shots, subtly, of course, at the patriarchy. Who built the house of Israel? I thought Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob built the house of Israel. They are the fathers of Israel. No, not according to the book of Ruth. It was Rachel and Leah. They don't mention here the other two concubines of Jacob, but they mention two of our very important matriarchs, and they say, you are going to build from her perhaps as great of a legacy as they built, Rachel and Leah. And may she do worthy things and proclaim a name in Bethlehem, and may your house, now they turn to Boaz and say, now may your house be like the house of Perez, etc., etc., right? First they bless her, then they bless him.
Boaz took Ruth the Moabite, and she became his wife. And he came to bed with her.
Now he comes to bed with her. Okay, now because they're married, it's okay to say they slept together.
The Lord granted her conception, and she bore a son. And the
now, here is what I think. I said to you, okay, the most powerful line in the Hebrew Bible, where you go, I will go, where you dwell, I will dwell, your God shall be my God. in the book of Ruth. This line may vie for that one in terms of how we measure it being of importance in this book. Maybe not a line that's as powerful just in general, but for a verse trying to sort of summarize what the book of Ruth is about, I think this verse competes adequately with that one. And the woman and the women.
Said to Naomi, "Blessed is the Lord."
Remember, Naomi, what did the women say to the... Sorry, I keep interrupting you, Vivian. What did the women say to Naomi last time? When's the last time we heard the women talking to Naomi? They were saying, "Oh, look what happened to Naomi. She came back. She looks terrible. Have you seen her?" And she answered them. Remember, Naomi answers them and says, "Don't even call me Naomi. Call me Mara. Call me bitter, because God has made my life a nightmare." Now these same women are talking again. And what are they saying? Blessed
is the Lord, who has not deprived you of a redeemer today, and let his name be proclaimed in Israel.
They're saying to Naomi, you who thought you had nothing, you came back and said you were bitter, you're dead, you have no hope in the world. God changed your luck, and you have not been deprived of a redeemer. Let God's name be proclaimed in Israel, and may he be a restorer of life for you. Go ahead, Vivian.
And a support for your old age, as your daughter-in-law, whom you love, has borne him, who has been better to you than 7 sons.
If there's any verse more powerful in this book, it's all these women saying, this Ruth was better to you than 7 sons.
Right.
Folks, the Bible hardly notices women. Women are generally disappointments. You want, not women, I mean a girl, a baby girl is generally a disappointment. Nobody wants in the Bible a girl. You want a boy. If the girl shows up, it's a disappointment, and you have to keep trying until you have a son. The book starts off with a woman saying that because there are no men in her life, this is what Naomi says, there are no more men in my life, I'm dead. Because I have no husband, I'm dead. Because my sons aren't around anymore, I'm dead. I don't exist. To that whole ethos comes this verse with a tremendous statement of rejection. This daughter-in-law that you loved, she has been better to you than 7 sons, who, by the way, would probably have left you once your husband died. They wouldn't have stuck around. When you would have told your sons, go find a new wife and leave me alone, they probably would have listened to you. But this daughter-in-law, she stood by your side. She didn't leave you alone. She said, what you eat, I will eat. Where you go, I will go. I'm not interested in following you to Israel so I can find a new husband. I'm interested in following you to Israel because I love you. And that is better than 7 sons could have ever done for you.
And Naomi took the child and placed him in her lap and became a nurse for him.
And look at, and this beautiful scene sort of ends with Naomi taking this child into her lap, showing you that this isn't just Ruth and Boaz's child. Naomi herself has been redeemed through this baby. This baby is Naomi's hope. It is her life. It is her renewal. It is her evidence that there is a God in the world who can turn life into death and affliction into riches and barrenness into childbearing.
And the neighbor women called a name for him, saying, a son is born to Naomi.
Look at that. They're saying the women who are in at the beginning of the book, buzzing gossips. That's what they are. That's not what happens at the end of the book. They undergo a transition like the rest of the book, showing women helping each other, women saying positive things about each other, blessing each other, taking in each other's joys. When they see this child on Naomi's lap, they don't say, oh, she's taking advantage of her daughter. Look at that. Poor Naomi. She has to live off her son-in-law. What a pathetic situation. That's not what they say. They say, a son is born to Naomi. Naomi got a child. She has gone from death unto life. And they called his name?
Obed. He was the father of Jesse, father of David.
Right. Father of Jesse, father of David. And this is the lineage. Go ahead. Let's end the story.
Perez begat Hezron, and Hezron begat Ram, and Ram begat Aminadab, and Aminadab begat Nachshon, and Nachshon begat Salmach, and Salmach begat Boaz, and Boaz begat Obed, and Obed begat Jesse, and Jesse begat David.
Now, in truth, the Megillah should have ended here. The Megillah should have ended, a son is born to Naomi, and they called his name Obed, and he was the father of Jesse, the father of David. That should have been the end of the Megillah. But this is what Yochi Brandis says. She says, this book was such a revolution compared to the other stories and books in the Bible. If the author of the book needed to put it in a costume, needed to dress it up. Remember, I said last class that one of the ways this costume gets placed on the book is at the beginning, instead of jumping into the story about women, it starts off totally as a story about men. There once was a man from named Elimelech. He had a wife, and she went with him wherever he went, and he had 2 sons, and this was their name. You know, that intro to the book, as I'm showing you here in chapter 1, is the way the book sort of makes the reader feel comfortable. Oh, this is a story I know. It's about a man and his wife. That's right. Like all good books of the Bible, it always starts with a man and his kids and his wife, right? Well, she says, Yochi Brandis, that's the same way the book had to end in order to be welcomed into the Hebrew Bible. It also had to end with a typical patriarchal ending. Are there any women in these last 5 verses? No. They all suddenly disappear. This is the lineage of Perez, and Perez begat Hezron, and Hezron begat Ram, and this guy gave birth to that guy, who gave birth to that guy, and that guy, and that guy, and that guy. The women exit the stage. They're gone again. And that's what we're used to. And you should look at these as 2 bookends on the story, which serve as camouflage. They serve as the costume that the book of Ruth wears that made it eligible to be included in the Tanakh, in the Hebrew Bible. Because without this sort of these book-ending passages, which are typically patriarchal, the book never would have made it in, because without this, this is just a story of women. Notice even the townspeople just turn into women at the end of the story. The men, even the men, right, which were portrayed earlier, they're not interested in Boaz as much as they're interested in Ruth. It's the women that are captivating, the women who are interesting. The women make things happen in this story. The women are portrayed as having wisdom, as having faith, and able to manipulate the situation in a way that where they feel that they can bring about God's plan. And for all of these reasons, I think the book is truly extraordinary and worth our study and our review every year, so that we can appreciate what truly makes it unique. Is this a story about chesed, about acts of loving kindness, as I suggested in the first class, right? That's the suggestion of the Talmud. It's the Talmud that asks what we asked in the first class. Why is this book written? Well, they say to show you that good people who do good things are always rewarded. Good people who do good things. Is that why this book was written? Yes. Was this book written so that we fall in love with the grandmother, the Moabite granddaughter of King David? Yes, that's why it was written. Was it written so that we would be more welcoming towards strangers and not rejecting people simply because of the tribe or the nation where they came from, to be more welcoming and tolerant of others who are different? Yes, that's certainly why it was written. But I think mostly the reason why it was written is to convey to us what power women have if they would only cooperate with each other and help each other. That when women don't stop seeing themselves as uh, competitors in the game of life and start seeing themselves more as sisters and friends, there is nothing that they cannot accomplish. They can bring life back to the dead, just like Ruth and Naomi. So that's where we end. I'm going to go to the chat and see if there are any final questions. Please feel free to use the chat dialogue if there's any questions that you have, further questions or comments about the story. So Marlene is saying the lineage tracing back to Paris ties it to another time when a woman manipulates the story. That's true. There's more to say about Tamar, but I do think, Marlene, and even you would agree, that Tamar's story is a woman who has no power. And here, the story is being reversed. And just like I've said that the book of Ruth is a criticism of the way women are portrayed in the rest of the Bible, a subtle criticism, so do I think it's particularly critical of women who are powerless. We're meant to look at this situation of Naomi's powerlessness and say, even God was dissatisfied with it and made things happen so that these women had avenues to regain some dignity in their lives. Why is a sandal used in the transaction, says Ray. Ray, we need some more time to talk about that. It's a very complicated procedure in Jewish law called levirate marriage. To spit on a sandal was the way that this was affected. I think it was more of a, in Jewish law, often there had to be a physical symbol of the rejection that everybody could see. And so to spit on your shoe was something clear and noticeable that everybody could attest to. And maybe that's why. There's more to be said about that, where it comes from. Who is reputed to be the author of the book of Ruth? Reputed is an interesting word there. Certainly, according to biblical scholars, the book of Ruth was written at different times in different places. There are different parts of the story that they feel date earlier. Some might indeed go back to the era that it's speaking of, that is to the pre-Davidic time, the time of the judges. But this book was probably written by around the time of the return of the exiles. when after the Babylonian exile, that's when most scholars will tell you that at least the final versions of the book were written. Ruth is naive. Perhaps she just laid down to him, which is Shirley says, it could mean that she just laid down to him, which is also intimate. So Shirley was talking about the scene at the threshing floor. Yeah, I just think that scene is, we should take it for what it is, which is the author deliberately obfuscating, deliberately leaving things unclear. It paints this very romantic scene of Boaz and Ruth on the threshing floor, and you can do with it whatever you want. If you want to, if you're teaching this to kids in school, particularly in an ultra-Orthodox school, you're going to read it one way. If you're more open to metaphors in the book and have a more mature audience, you can read it a different way. And as I said to you, Robert Alter, who's a great biblical scholar, says nothing happened. But Yochi Brandis is one who says all of the times that the word lie down, she lay down, she lay down. I mean, that word is so often used in the Bible as sexually explicit that it's hard to think that the author isn't screaming at us that something happened, even though it might not be clear that something happened. So I hope that this helps us gain an appreciation for this book before Shavuot and helps you understand some of what we're going to be talking about on Thursday night, because there's so many themes here. First of all, the role of women in Jewish life. The theme of how we tell stories, and sometimes is manipulation of facts a good thing? Is it helpful to sometimes not tell the truth and change the facts of the story when we want an outcome that we really believe is meant to be? And there's also this theme of intermarriage. How closed should the Jewish community be when one of our favorite stories is a story of a Moabite, which is the lowest of the low of the nations, that ends up marrying a Jew and becoming the grandmother of King David? That's another angle to take on this story, and certainly the angle that our sages take, which is how do we build a world that looks more like this fairy tale that is being told to us? When people, if part of the message of this book is the world would look so much better if people were just nice to each other, how can we say those words and really mean it and try and transform the world that we live in, so that we can at least apply some of these lessons to our own circumstances? That to me remains certainly one of the most powerful reads of the book. Everybody is just nice. The men are nice, the women are nice. If there's anyone who's sort of depicted as a bit of a dum-dum, it's the redeeming kinsman. But he's like 3 or 4 verses in the whole story. And obviously this theme of women cooperating with each other and working together. I know that in the world we live in, a lot of young girls especially feel like our society increasingly has women putting other women down instead of helping them up. And this is something that we can work on, and that the Book of Ruth, I think, can serve a great model, because here you have 2 women who have different strengths and different weaknesses, and when they put them together, everything works out. So thanks for joining me through these 2 classes, and I will see hopefully many of you Thursday. We're going to do this more of a discussion. We're not going to read the book. It's going to be me and Rabbi Sachs talking about some of the themes and their application to Jewish life. And I want it to be interactive so that those who have their own thoughts and ideas about this story and about its themes can also share at that time. So wish you all a great day. Enjoy. And I appreciate again always learning from you and learning with you. Take care.
Uh,
Thank